really has mediated against any kind of liberal view of society and culture.
It's hard to change their mind, you know. It could be, but maybe it will be a long process. We have to be careful to approach with them, and we need very good strategic way to feel them comfortable. I don't think it will be easy.
Yeah, I just want to say that in my work in the community, I've focused on the church providing services to the people that live around us, our neighbors. At first I thought, well, you know, maybe some of these people will eventually want to become Unitarian Universalists. Not the case. But I feel like our greatest message and hope is for the children of the people that we're providing services with. That perhaps they, in their time, as they grow up and see the church as being a positive influence in their lives, will see things differently. With more education, with more liberalization in their communities. Many of our neighbors are illiterate, coming from Mexico, particularly the women, and they have very superstitious views about religion and how religion should be. So at one point, I remember years ago, there was a rumor that I picked up that we were devil worshippers in that church. So
yeah, I think because our background, all religions are very traditional. Unitarian Church is not a traditional, in my opinion. And they asked me, oh, what Bible are you reading? I said, well, sometimes we read some part of the Bible or in other important books. And, you know, they are thinking in the traditional religion, they must to read a Bible. And if they are not familiar with a non-traditional religion, they will not feel comfortable.
And I think this really is very pertinent to UU's today, because we have a Latino who is president of our association, and this is very heartening. You know, it's a shift. And earlier in the discussion, the political discussion group, somebody asked the question about, you know, well, what good does working on immigration do for the long term? And I would say that the last election proved that how important immigration rights are. You know, years ago, not so many years ago, but about 5 years ago, we had an effort to educate Latinos and to get them encourage them to become citizens of the United States. And there were people in our church that said, well, what good is that? You've got to deal with the problems of the immigrants, not get them to become citizens of the United States. Well, I felt very strongly at the time that was a wrong view to take. So our efforts to become inclusive of people of other cultures and other ways of viewing things is really important. But it also means, I think, that we as Unitarian Universalists are going to have to stretch ourselves and accept that there will be cultural differences, important cultural differences, that may divide us. But as long as we keep in mind that we have more things in common than we have things driving us apart, I think we can forge ahead as a more unified and more diverse denomination.
Another thing I saw in our church, I was thinking 4 or 5 years ago, we have different programs now, and they visit us, the Latino American community, they visit us because we have different programs for their children, even for them, like exercise, classes, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think we started to approach to them little by little. It's not, maybe in long term we can be more successful. I don't say we never will have more Latino American people in our church. I think it will be, I can see it. And probably the second generation will have better approach with us.
Yeah, I just want to mention that under our minister, Reverend Rick Hoyt, we've expanded our community programs. So we support the community garden, which is really adjacent to the church. So we're active with that. Out of that community garden, the community asked if they could use the church to have exercise classes. So we have aerobics and Zumba classes there. And those classes are the people that come to those classes are the women in the community. They're not our church members, and those women come because there's no place else for them to exercise. And they're very appreciative of that, but they're never going to become members of our church, so they don't come to our services. We have tutoring, math tutoring on the weekend for children in the community. Again, this is not for our children. We don't have any children at First Church yet, I'm hoping. But these are the community's children, and we take those children on field trips. So we've recently allied ourselves with Sierra Club. We went on a hike in Malibu Mountains. Some of these children had never been on a hike before. They had never seen the ocean before. So, you know, it's a stretch to try to understand the poverty of culturally enriching these children who are confined really by invisible boundaries in that community. And so we're trying in a variety of ways to be inclusive, to provide resources and opportunities for the people in the community. I also want to mention that we do a large food distribution program every Saturday morning. We provide groceries for about 500 families in the community every Saturday. So, which is another important contribution. Again, the people that come are not members of the church. They're not going to be involved with the church. So I have come to recognize that we're there, we're doing these things because it's good for the community. It's not necessarily something that the church is going to benefit from directly. But I think it should be done. It's something that should be done. So, yeah, questions?
Yeah, I've got a question and a statement. First of all, you said that they ask you, what book are you using? I'd like to make a suggestion. How many of you in here have read The Prophet by Khalil Gibran? Yeah. Put your hands up if you read it. Okay? Now, that book is about Gibran's, he was 72 when he wrote it, his life experience, and it goes through everything from when you're born to when you die. It covers all the topics. This could be used, and when someone says, I mean, I would get 100 copies of this. I would start letting people say, this comes close to how we feel. Because this book is so powerful. It is so, it's something they will identify with, no matter what their past is, that you could use as a vehicle to and then go from there. Believe me, I think it would make, how many feel that would be helpful in here? Okay?
Well, I just want to respond. Margarita may have a comment too. I think that the people we're talking about, you need to interact with them first, because I don't think they're going to read this book. Okay? Many of them are illiterate. Many of them do not read at all.
Well, fine. Well, what you do, though, is you have people in, and you have someone read it and interpret it. I mean, you take a small group.
I don't want to debate this with you, but I just want to tell you that we tried to get people from the community to come in and talk about immigration when they were having immigration sweeps in the community, and people were doors were being knocked on by ICE and people were being hauled off to immigration detention centers, and people would not come to our church to discuss that. Do you have a comment about it?
Yeah, because in religion tradition, it must be the Bible. If you talk about another book, they say, no, this is the book we have to follow up. This is the book we give it to us, the guide. You know, they are not very open-minded. It's not, I don't say maybe work for a few of them, but not for all of them. It's, yeah.
Yeah, our church used to have an Oscar Romero program, and we had the 40-hour certificates. And I remember signing over 100 of these documents that allowed all these people who took the ESL classes and the citizenship to actually stay in the country. So this little Unitarian church actually did a lot that way. And I remember Adelita, who was also up there, remember her father, and who was a parliament member.
Ricardo Slada and his wife are members.
And we actually harbored the mom, who they said had no reason to be in this country, although so they arrested the 6-year-old for harboring her mom. And that family went all around different Orange County churches and homes. And so we're so pleased that she's an immigration lawyer, isn't she, Adelina?
Yes.
Yes,
she is.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the bond fund?
Well, yeah. Do you want me to do that now?
Yeah.
Okay. Some years ago, I realized that there were people in detention and everybody was ignoring them. And that was particularly relevant because some of these people were from the community around First Church. And I personally, my parents were immigrants from Eastern Europe, from Hungary, Jewish. And during really the Second World War, I remember being affected strongly by the fact that I had relatives that were being gassed by Nazis. And, you know, the awareness that, the German people, the people generally didn't want to know, that they didn't want to see it. I mean, I can understand it. I can understand that they were living within the breath's space of where people were being murdered and not wanting to see it. And I kind of felt like, well, I want to be a witness. I don't know what that meant, but I want to be a witness. And so during during the sanctuary movement, I worked with an interfaith group that was supporting immigrants that were coming to the United States from El Salvador and Guatemala at that time. And I worked with a very important agency, El Rescate. And actually Margarita's worked with them also, one of the agencies that was formed by Salvadoran immigrants that came during the diaspora, during the war. And at that time we raised money that to bond out people. So immigration, was INS at that time, was putting people into detention centers. They were turning old motels in the Pico Union area into detention centers. And so the detainees were really close, you know, and El Rescate was a source of their asking for help. And so the consequence of that was that I was the point person at that time to call up and say, INS has a family. There's a mother and 3 children, and they're going for only $2,000. And I would call the interfaith group and I would raise money. They would send me the money, and then I would go down and I'd hand over the money, and then these people would be out of jail. So that ended when the war ended. But subsequently, I thought, now it's happening. There should be something like that today. And so I've started the bond fund. I'm really raising money. We've bonded out 8 people, 8 men, and there are 2 transsexuals that are in process of being bonded out as we speak. So that's 10 people. It's difficult raising money, but you know, now I'm beginning to get the money back because these same people that applied for bond in court are now turning up and having their cases reviewed, and the courts are now refunding the bond money. So I just got a check from the government for $2,300 for somebody that we had bonded out last year. So now I see this as a revolving fund. So I'm going around hat in hand. The money that we will get from our speaking here will go into the bond fund. Ruth and Ted and the UUSC unit have been very generous. Actually, a friend of mine left me some money when he died. I don't know if any of you know Marv Tavlin. He was a dear friend of mine and an activist, and when he died, he left me $500. I put that in the bond fund. So over time, we've raised the money, and we've been able to get people out of detention. And now with the visitation, I don't know if you all know about the visitation program, because I do know that Karen Stoyanoff, your minister, is involved in that, as is the legislative ministry. And so we're getting more and more contact with these people, and they need bond money to get out. And you hear these heart-wrenching stories, you know, when you go and you visit them in detention. By the way, the system does not call them jails, they call them guests. The people are guests in their facilities, and there are no guards, they're officers. And these euphemisms are used, and it's really horrific, you know, that we accept all that stuff, which is really so counter to any humanity. So if you would like to make a donation to the bond fund, it will be well used. You just make the check out to First Unitarian Church Bond Fund.